One of the research projects that we've worked on involves eelgrass or seagrasses. And you can't really see seagrasses from here because they're all underwater. But what seagrasses are, they're actually vascular plants. So they're very similar to the grass that you see here and a lot of the plants that you see on land. But what they do is they grow underwater. And by growing underwater, they create this complex habitat. And it's basically like a small forest under the sea. And anytime that you have a forest, you have places where animals and well, crustaceans, fish, and other plant life can live. And so it really creates a good habitat for the very, very young fishes and larvae and crustaceans. So what Chris is going to show you really quick is how we sample seagrasses. What we have here is a coring device. It's basically a PVC pipe, and the back end twists off. And so, Chris, if you just want to mock that up real quick. Sure. What we do is we shove it into the seagrass. We're not actually going to shove it in because we don't want to damage the marsh surface here. But you shove it in, you get a lot of sediment and grass in there, and then you cap it. So it creates a vacuum, and then you pull it out. And so Chris is now going to show you, if you want to grab the plug right there, we wind up with this muddy mess. It's mud, there's seagrass. Sometimes we wind up with really small animals in there. And then what we do is the next thing we need to do is we need to get all that sediment out. So Chris, if you just want to show, we throw this all into a mesh bag, rinse it with water a lot, and then you wind up with this kind of mix. And this is your seagrass. You can see the green blades. And Chris, why don't you show the rest of it? Sure. All right, here, let me hold this for you, Chris. Why don't you take it for a minute?
Like Greg was saying, seagrass grows underwater. So there's a difference between seagrass and seaweed. Now you can see this is a type of algae, which is actually seaweed. Now the difference between algae and seagrass is algae doesn't have a root system. It has what's called a holdfast. But you can see on this eelgrass right at the bottom is that there's actually roots on it. So that's the difference. We also have a different kind of seagrass called widgeon grass, which is a little bit different, but we're focusing on eelgrass actually. Now, eelgrass is really important in estuaries because it's an area where juvenile fish species and all sorts of other things like crabs and clams actually grow up. And estuaries really need eelgrass beds due to the fact that they dampen wave activity, they keep sediment rooted, and also they pretty much provide a vital habitat for pretty much everything that's found in the bay. And I think Greg is actually going to talk about some of the things we have here in the bay right now.
All right, so as I mentioned, there's a whole lot of organisms that you'll find in seagrass beds. These are just two that happen to come up with that core. There is a worm, which obviously lives in the sediment and also can serve as a food for various fishes. We also have a very small clam here too. And this was in that muddy sample that we pulled out before. Some other species that you'll find in seagrass communities are scallops. You'll find many species of fish. In fact, you'll find grass shrimp like these guys. If you just want to bring the camera over there and show. Here, you can walk right here. Just get a better look. Various species of shrimp, and you can tell, you know, if you're a hungry fish coming along and these guys are living in that seagrass, you're very interested in eating those. And some of the other really neat organisms that we've found in seagrasses, and we found these yesterday, are... Yesterday, we were out in the boat looking at seagrass, and we found the spider crab, who's doing his best to claw me pretty hard here. But they'll hang on to the seagrass and feed. And somebody had mentioned sharks before. This is a smooth dogfish here. And you can see it's actually a little pup, and it probably wound up, was born in the seagrass community and has been eating and hunting there. And you can see his mouth is underneath, so any crustaceans, shrimp, crabs, he'll swim along, and he's adapted to feeding on the bottom. So they'll kind of grab him and suck him up here, as opposed to, you know, your more Hollywood-style sharks with the jaws, you know, the teeth up on the end. Those are more fish eaters. So just thought you guys might be interested in seeing that, and it's verification that, yes, we do have a couple small sharks in our estuaries. And one other thing, one other habitat I just want to mention really quickly before we go to the next group is up here on the marsh surface. It was mentioned before, this is intertidal. In other words, when the tide gets very high, this entire area floods. Now, if you look over here, you can see all these shallow marsh pools. And these are very important habitat for various species of fish and crustaceans also. We saw the grass shrimp before. We also have what is a sheepshead minnow, and they jump around, but this is one of your dominant species. This is one of the most dominant species on the marsh, in the marsh pools and on the marsh surface during the high tides. And we have over here, this is a fungulus, that's the Latin name, or this also known as a killifish, often used as bait. And this species is also in the marsh pools. And that's actually a large female. And we also have a male with kind of like an iridescent look, too.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it, and thanks to all you guys for helping us to show some of these cool creatures.